and also Wendy. Give me your honest reaction. Were you shocked about the Wendy of it all? Because I've heard some rumblings that some of you guys weren't really that shocked.
To the degree, absolutely. Of course. Huge.
Breaking news. At exactly 3:07 a.m., Potomac stopped breathing. The streets were silent. The city was asleep. And then, out of nowhere, the darkness split open with the scream of FBI sirens tearing through the night. Red and blue lights flooded the neighborhood, and within seconds, the unthinkable happened. Gizelle Bryant, the woman who built her brand on confidence, shade, and power, was dragged out of her home in handcuffs, her mascara running, her robe slipping, her voice cracking as she shouted the same line again and again. "This is a lie! This is Wendy's lie!" But inside the interrogation room across town, Wendy Osefo had already detonated the bomb that shattered every illusion. With trembling hands, swollen eyes, and a voice barely holding itself together, she whispered the sentence that flipped the entire scandal upside down. "I didn't plan the fraud. Gizelle Bryant and my husband Edward did. I was set up." And just like that, the woman the world thought was the mastermind, the woman everyone mocked, dragged, and judged, the woman who supposedly staged a fake burglary for $450,000, suddenly looked less like a criminal and more like a target caught inside someone else's trap. Investigators were stunned. FBI agents froze. And then, the evidence came pouring in like a flood. Chats, voice notes, deleted drafts, receipts typed by Gizelle herself, a plan so detailed, so cold, so calculated, it rewrote the entire story. Gizelle didn't just know everything, she orchestrated everything. And Wendy's downfall? It was part of her blueprint. Tonight, the truth is no longer hiding. Tonight, everything breaks.
Want to say that, like all of you, I found out about the charges against Wendy and Eddie Osefo on Friday morning, and
at exactly 3:07 a.m., the night Wendy Osefo's world collapsed, Potomac felt less like a city and more like a crime scene that had been holding its breath for years. The neighborhood was wrapped in silence, the kind that feels heavy, almost intelligent, like it already knows something catastrophic is coming. And then the sirens started. They weren't sirens you hear during a routine arrest or some neighborhood chaos. These were federal sirens, long, sharp, and vicious. Sirens that tear open sleep and slice through every window. Sirens that announce one thing: tonight is different. Tonight is historic. The first FBI SUV skidded to a stop outside Gizelle Bryant's house, tires screaming across the pavement. The floodlights came on all at once, washing her mansion in a harsh, merciless glow. Cameras clicked from down the street. Neighbors peeked through blinds. And then the door burst open. Gizelle stood there barefoot, robe half-tied, mascara running down her cheek like black tears. She looked like a woman who had been dragged out of a nightmare and shoved into a new one. Agents surrounded her, hands gripping her wrists before she could even process the reality unfolding in front of her. Her voice cracked as she tried to scream, but the words came out in broken pieces. This is a setup. This is Wendy's lie. Let me explain. Let me explain. But no one was listening. Not anymore. Not after what had surfaced. Hours earlier, in a cold interrogation room across town, Wendy sat under a flickering fluorescent light, her hands trembling, her entire world dissolving piece by piece. She looked like a mother, a professor, a woman who once preached integrity, but now she was just a shadow wrapped in exhaustion and shattered pride. The detective slid a file across the table. Photos, documents, messages, evidence, all pointing to her and Eddie. Wendy's shoulders collapsed. Her facade, the one built on degrees, respectability, superiority, crumbled like wet sand. And then she said it, the sentence that detonated the entire Bravo universe. "I didn't plan the fraud. Gizelle and Edward did. I was pulled into their plan, and when I tried to back out, they made sure I took the fall." The room froze. Even the air felt stunned. The detective didn't blink. He just stared at Wendy as if she had confessed to witnessing a murder. Wendy swallowed hard, every breath shaking. "I swear to you, Gizelle orchestrated everything." The investigators had assumed Wendy was lying. They had assumed she was shifting blame to protect her husband. They had assumed this was just another desperate reality star scrambling for mercy. But then, the data extractions came in, and everything changed. The chats between Edward and Gizelle were not subtle. They were not vague. They weren't even clever attempts at a cover-up. They were instructions, cold Cold, calculated, strategic instructions. Gizelle to Edward. Make sure the bedroom looks chaotic. Only one room. It needs to look staged, but not too staged. You understand? Gizelle to Wendy. Don't stress. Just enjoy Jamaica. When you come back, the timing will be perfect. Gizelle again. Send me the scanned receipts. Serial numbers must match. And then, the one message that made even seasoned FBI agents shift uncomfortably. If this goes wrong, Wendy will take the fall. Trust me, she talks too much. It was the kind of message that doesn't just expose a plan. It exposes a person's entire soul. Suddenly, everything Wendy had been saying made sense. Suddenly, the inconsistencies investigators saw weren't incompetence. They were sabotage. Suddenly, the burglary, which once seemed like a sloppy, desperate attempt at fraud, now looked like an evil genius-level manipulation. The staged bedroom, the duplicate insurance lists, the bags and jewelry that had been refunded years earlier, the ring camera that never triggered, the ADT system that never sounded, the missing items found inside the house with matching serial numbers, the perfectly timed vacation, the emotional collapse Wendy displayed on camera after returning home. It wasn't Wendy performing for insurance investigators. It was Wendy performing the role Gizelle had assigned her. But the moment the evidence went public, everything spiraled. Social media overturned itself in seconds. Commentators, bloggers, conspiracy channels, everyone who had dragged Wendy for weeks suddenly turned their pitchforks toward Gizelle. Gizelle is the mastermind? Wendy wasn't lying. She was set up. Edward working with Gizelle? What is this? This is the darkest Bravo scandal ever. And then came the nuclear reaction. Kiana Stewart's live stream. She leaned into the camera, eyes blazing, voice steady like someone who had been waiting for this moment her entire life. I told y'all, I've been telling you, Gizelle is the problem. Wendy was never the mastermind. She was the puppet, and Gizelle was pulling every string. Within seconds, her live stream crossed 300,000 viewers. Comments exploded like popcorn. Screenshots went viral. Bravo executives reportedly had a meltdown behind the scenes. But the darkest twist wasn't the arrest. It wasn't the leaked chats. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was Wendy breaking down in custody, whispering the truth she had been too scared to say for months. Edward pressured me. Gizelle planned it. They needed money. They needed a scapegoat. I wanted out. They trapped me. Her voice cracked on the last word. Her face twisted with the kind of pain you only see in people who were betrayed by the ones they trusted most. Investigators leaned back, realizing that the entire case, the one the world thought was so simple, was actually a three-layered conspiracy built on manipulation, betrayal, and greed. And for the first time, Wendy didn't look like a criminal. She looked like a woman swallowed by two people who saw her as disposable. Back on the street, as Gizelle was shoved into the federal SUV, her screams tore through the night. This isn't my fault! Tell them, Edward! Tell them! But Edward wasn't there. He wasn't defending her. He wasn't running toward her. He wasn't saying a word, because for the first time in his life, Edward Osifo was silent. And silence? Silence is louder than a confession. The SUV door slammed, the lights flashed, the engines roared, and Potomac, still frozen, still breathless, finally understood. Wendy may have been the perfect shield, but Gizelle Bryant was the perfect villain. And tonight, the villain finally got caught. The moment Gizelle's SUV disappeared into the darkness, Potomac shifted into something unrecognizable. It wasn't just a scandal anymore. It wasn't Bravo drama, reality TV chaos, or petty shade thrown across a reunion couch. It was betrayal layered so thick it suffocated the entire city. The sun still hadn't risen, but everybody felt it. Potomac had entered the kind of storm that destroys lives in slow motion. Inside the precinct, Wendy sat alone in a holding cell, her knees pulled tightly against her chest, as if she were trying to hold together every shattered piece of herself. She had spent years carefully building an image, a mother, a professor, a woman of 4 degrees, a symbol of credibility. And now, she was staring at a future where her name was permanently stapled to the words felony fraud, not because she masterminded the crime, but because she trusted the wrong people, because she believed in friendships that were designed to betray her, because she let herself be used as a shield in a game she didn't even know she was playing. A guard walked by, stopping long enough to glance at her with a mixture of pity and disbelief. "You need anything?" he asked. Wendy lifted her face. Her eyes were swollen, her voice hoarse. "Do they believe me?" The guard took a deep breath. "They're looking at everything again. The phones, the messages, the audio, your statements. Nothing's clear yet, but they're questioning things they didn't question before." Wendy nodded slowly, her fingers digging into her palms like she was trying to stop herself from shaking, because the truth was, she wasn't afraid of prison. She was afraid of being remembered for something she didn't do. She was afraid of being buried under a lie someone else created. She was afraid that no matter how much evidence surfaced, people had already decided she was guilty. Meanwhile, across town, Edward Osifo sat in a separate room, staring at a metal table that reflected the worst version of himself. He had spent the night pacing, trembling, breathing hard, wiping sweat from his face, muttering to himself like a man wrestling with demons he could no longer control. Every second, the walls felt like they were closing in on him, squeezing the truth out of him inch by inch. When investigators re-entered the room, Edward flinched like a child caught stealing. They placed a laptop in front of him and pressed play. Gizelle's voice filled the room. "If this goes wrong, Wendy will take the fall. She talks too much." Edward's eyes widened with horror. He whispered something under his breath, something that sounded like a prayer or a curse, before slamming his fist on the table. "She wasn't supposed to say that. She wasn't supposed to." "Edward," the lead agent interrupted, "you can help yourself right now, but this only goes one way. Either you work with us, or you go down with her." He buried his face in his hands. "I never wanted Wendy to get hurt. I thought, God, I don't know what I thought, but the truth was obvious." He knew exactly what he thought. He thought he could trust Gizelle. He thought she would protect him because she promised she would. He thought he could outsmart the insurers, the police, the cameras, the world. He was wrong on every count. Outside the station, reporters were already gathering like vultures circling a carcass. Microphones were raised, cameras pointed. Commentators who spent years pretending to be neutral now spoke with a hunger that made the air feel dangerous. This is the biggest Bravo scandal in history. Gizelle's arrest changes everything about Wendy's case. Edward's silence is suspicious. The audio has blown this investigation open. And then the clip leaked. That clip, the 6 seconds of pure venom. The 6 seconds that flipped the narrative on its head. Gizelle's voice dripped with smug confidence as she whispered, "If this goes wrong, Wendy will take the fall." Within minutes, the audio hit every timeline, every group chat, every trending list. Viewers all over the country froze in disbelief. Clips of Wendy's earlier breakdowns, arguments, and confessionals resurfaced online. People who had mocked her, dragged her, and called her fake were now posting long apologies under old videos. It wasn't sympathy, it was guilt. They had enjoyed her pain like entertainment, and now they realized she wasn't acting. She was drowning in a conspiracy she never understood. Meanwhile, Gizelle's daughters woke up to the sight of news vans parked outside their driveway, strangers shouting questions, and their mother's face plastered across every headline with one word flashing in red: arrested. One of the agents escorting Gizelle through processing whispered to another, "She's acting tough, but she's terrified." And it was true. Behind the arrogance, behind the signature Bravo smirk, behind the woman who built her life on being untouchable, there was a fear she couldn't hide. As they fingerprinted her, she whispered under her breath, "Edward better fix this. He better fix this, or I swear." But she didn't finish the sentence, because for the first time in her life, Gizelle Bryant understood she wasn't in control anymore. Back at the precinct, Wendy watched the clip of Gizelle's audio leak on a guard's phone. Her hands flew to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face, not because she was relieved, but because hearing it confirmed the one fear she had refused to acknowledge. Gizelle didn't just betray her. Gizelle planned to destroy her. And Edward? He was the weapon Gizelle needed. Investigators returned to Wendy's cell. They didn't speak. They just looked at her differently now, like she was no longer the criminal, but the missing piece in a puzzle they hadn't realized was upside down. Wendy's voice cracked. "What happens now?" One detective leaned forward. Now we find out if you want to save yourself." Wendy stared at the ground. The truth was, there were no good choices left, only the least painful one. "I want to tell you everything," she whispered. And in that moment, Potomac took a breath again, not because things were getting better, but because the real story was finally coming to light. The truth they had all ignored had become too loud to silence. And in the middle of it all, Gizelle sat in a holding room, hands trembling, makeup ruined, her empire crumbling, her legacy burning. The Queen of Shade had finally become the Queen of Scandal, and the story was just beginning. The morning after the arrests, Potomac woke up to a silence so thick it felt unnatural. News vans lined the streets. Helicopters hovered over rooftops, the smell of rain mixed with panic. Every neighbor pretended not to stare, yet couldn't look away. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted to know which part of the story was true and which part was the performance. But the deeper the investigation went, the clearer it became that nothing, absolutely nothing, was as it seemed. Inside the FBI headquarters, Edward Osefo sat alone in a room colder than any prison cell he could imagine. His hands shook as he stared at the wall, replaying every moment he had with Wendy, every lie he told her, every promise he broke. He could hear Wendy's voice in his head, soft, trusting, almost childlike, asking him if they were safe, if everything was under control. And every time, he told her what she wanted to hear, even though he knew exactly what he was helping create. When the agent stepped back into the room, Edward didn't look up. The man placed a thick folder onto the table and slid it forward. "It's all here," the agent said quietly. "The timeline, the chats, the money, the planning, the purchases, every move you and Gizelle made. She's talking. Now it's your turn." Edward's jaw tightened. "Talking? What is she saying? That you pressured her, that you masterminded the whole thing, that Wendy was following your orders, not hers." Edward's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, moment, the room tilted. Gizelle turned on him. He should have seen it coming. This was who she was. Someone who didn't lose alone. Someone who didn't fall quietly. Someone who dragged the people closest to her down with her. The agent leaned in. If you don't speak now, her story becomes the story. And trust me, she's painting you as the architect. Edward squeezed his eyes shut. He could see Wendy's face. Broken, terrified, confused. He could feel the weight of what he had done crushing his chest. And in one painful whisper, he surrendered. I'll tell you everything. Across the hallway, Wendy sat in yet another interview room. She was wrapped in a blanket, her hair messy, her eyes swollen from crying. Yet something had changed. She wasn't shaking anymore. She wasn't breaking. She was empty, completely drained, like she had run out of pain. The agent entered with slow steps. Wendy, Edward is talking. Her heart dropped. What did he say? He confirmed some of your claims. Not all, but enough that prosecutors are reconsidering portions of the charges against you. We need the full story, every detail. If you cooperate, we can protect you. Wendy didn't answer at first. She stared at the table, tracing the cold metal with her fingertips. She could still hear Edward's voice telling her everything would be fine. She could still hear Gizelle laughing the night before Wendy's trip, telling her to enjoy Jamaica, telling her she worked too hard, that she deserved a break. A break. That's what she thought she was getting. Instead, she walked into a trap designed with her name on it. She lifted her head. I'll talk, but I want the truth recorded exactly as it happened. Meanwhile, Gizelle Bryant was sitting on the far end of the building, arms folded, lips pressed tight, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. She looked like a queen stripped of her throne, fighting to maintain whatever dignity she could salvage. But dignity doesn't survive in places like this. Not when you've been exposed. Not when your entire empire is built on being untouchable. Her attorney whispered urgently in her ear, papers spread out before them. But Gizelle wasn't listening. She was staring at the door, waiting, almost hoping that someone, anyone, would say she could go home, that this was a misunderstanding, that she could climb back into her robe, back onto her couch, back into the life where she controlled the narrative. But that world was gone, burned to ash. Her lips finally parted. I want to make a statement, she said, her voice low but sharp. The lawyer nodded, relieved. Good, let's start cooperating. No, Gizelle snapped. Not to you, not to the FBI. I want to speak to the cameras, to the public, to my audience. The lawyer's eyes widened. Absolutely not. But Gizelle wasn't asking for permission. She was reclaiming what little power she had left, the power of spectacle. Back inside the media frenzy, Bravo executives were having a meltdown. Phones were ringing non-stop. Advertisers were threatening to pull out. Fans were demanding answers. One producer slammed his fist onto the table. We can't bury this. It's too big. Another whispered. This could destroy the entire franchise. Someone else muttered. Or save it. People love chaos. The world was feeding on every update, every rumor, every leaked document. For the first time, people weren't watching the show. They were watching the downfall of a world they once believed was glamorous. By evening, statements started leaking. Edward's confession, Wendy's testimony, and worst of all, new footage. A neighbor's camera had captured something none of them expected. A figure slipping into the Osifo house the night before the staged burglary. The woman wore a hood. She moved fast. She carried something heavy. But when the camera zoomed, the face became unmistakable. It was Gizelle. The video hit the internet like a meteor. People didn't just watch the clip. They dissected it, slowed it down, enhanced the frame, circled the timestamps. Her fans couldn't defend her anymore. Her critics didn't need to explain anything. The footage spoke for itself. Wendy watched the clip from the corner of a holding cell. Her chest tightened. Tears filled her eyes. But this time they weren't from fear. They were from vindication. She wasn't the liar. She wasn't the fraud. She wasn't the monster they made her out to be. She was the one who got played. Gizelle was the one who played her. And Edward was the one who let it happen. Hours later, Wendy was escorted into a private room. Prosecutors sat across from her, papers stacked, pens ready. Her attorney whispered, "This is your turning point. Everything changes tonight." Wendy nodded once, wiping her tears. "I want justice," she whispered. "Not revenge, justice." The lead prosecutor leaned forward. "Then let's begin." Across the hallway, Gizelle sat alone in her dimly lit corner, watching the world crumble around her. For the first time in her career, in her life, she had no storyline to hide behind, no reunion special to yell through, no producer to manipulate, only consequences, only truth, only silence. And in that silence, Even she had to face the reality she had always managed to avoid. She didn't just lose the game, she exposed herself as the villain of it. And villains? Villains never get happy endings. If you're still here right now, then you already understand what this really is. This isn't gossip. This isn't petty Bravo shade. This is a full-scale collapse of everything they thought they could hide. And now, you have a choice. You can walk away, pretend this never happened. Let these powerful people rewrite the narrative like they always do. Or you can stand with the truth, the real truth. The truth Wendy whispered through tears while her entire world burned around her. So here's what you need to do right now. Hit the like button so this story doesn't get buried under Bravo's PR machine. Comment what you think actually happened. Your voice is louder than you know. Share this video everywhere, your group chats, your socials, your timelines. When powerful people try to silence the truth, the only weapon we have is each other. And subscribe, because this is not over, not even close. More footage is coming, more leaks are coming, more secrets are about to explode. And when they do, you don't want to be the last person to know. If you leave now, they win. If you stay, we expose everything.